Today, we look at the topic development and developmental principles. Why should we understand what development is and why should we study it? Development is described as the growth of humans throughout their lifespan, from conception to death. The scientific study of human development seeks to explain how and why people change throughout life. This includes all aspects of human growth, including physical, emotional, intellectual, social, perceptual and personality development. Development involves not only the biological and physical aspects of growth, but also the cognitive and social aspects associated with development throughout life. Why should we study development? The reasons are here. First, to study development means to understand ourselves better. This is very important for someone dealing with children. Often as adults, we forget that we too had been children, how we thought and felt as children. There is a huge generation gap once we begin dealing with children. Studying development also makes us aware of the present day environment and stay connected with the society while dealing with children. Secondly, it facilitates learning more about our children. Sometimes dealing with one's own children is very difficult because of our personal expectations and cultural conditioning. Studying development helps us achieve better perspective when trying to know more about our own children. Thirdly, it enhances our knowledge of how to interact with kids. Greater understanding of children through studying development gets translated into meaningful interactions with children, our own and our students. Fourthly, one gets a holistic insight and approach to life. Fifthly, it helps us realize what is normal and what is not. This is very important in today's globalized world where we have to interact with different people from different cultural backgrounds. Most importantly, studying human development makes it easier to identify the possible developmental problems in physical or cognitive progression in early childhood, and also the emotional struggles that happen later on in life. Being able to identify the potential problems is the most important objective. If the developmental problems are detected earlier, intervention can be started earlier, whatever be the situation. Early detection and treatment can yield improved results. Now that we know what development is and the reasons for studying it, let us look into the 5 principles of development. Development is lifelong. Normally, development is related to child development only, but one of the most important features of development is that it is lifelong. Some significant foundations for development are established in childhood, but real development is a lifelong process. We need to recognize that learning is not confined to childhood or within the classroom, but takes place throughout life and in a range of situations. During the last 50 years, constant scientific and technological innovations and changes have had a profound effect on learning needs and styles. Learning to acquire knowledge is no longer restricted to a place and time. Similarly, learning cannot be restricted only to school or college, nor confined to a particular location in order to apply the acquired knowledge. Instead, learning can be seen as something that takes place on an ongoing basis from our daily interaction with others and with the world around us. Some of the problems involved in studying development as a lifelong process and not just a childhood process include studying the problems that are special to adults and youth. It involves a process, situations and experiences. During the process of physical and mental growth, do the adults think differently? With the exposure to different environment and circumstances, do adults find themselves adaptable? Does the accumulation of experience and knowledge change the behavior pattern? There are three key developmental domains in the lifespan perspective. The physical domain deals with the physical changes that an individual goes through. Height, shape of the body, weight fluctuations and puberty are all physical changes that can be included within the physical domain. Along with the physical changes, changes in a person's perception and how he or she experiences the world can be categorized within the physical domain. The cognitive domain deals with cognitive issues such as thinking, decision making processes and memory. Any cognitive function is classified within this domain. The final domain is the social domain. According to Boyd and Bee, the social domain includes changes in variables that are associated with the relationship of an individual to others. For instance, studies of children's social skills fall into the social domain, as does research on individual differences in personality. There are different domains in the lifespan perspective, the different periods of life that an individual passes through as well. There are 8 developmental periods that are covered within the lifespan perspective. From birth to 1 year, a child goes through the trust versus mistrust stage. This period can be classified as the critical period. This concept suggests that there may be specific periods in development when an organism is specially sensitive to the presence or absence of some particular kind of experience. For a child, the presence or absence of a parent or caretaker determines whether or not the child develops trust in his or herself. The second period of life is early childhood. Children of age 1 to 3 can be classified as being in early childhood. This period of life is the autonomy versus shame and doubt stage. During this stage of life, a child will develop new physical skills that will allow him or her to have more choices, and through these choices the child will develop a personal will. Middle childhood, ages 3 to 6, cover the initiative versus guilt stages of life. During this age range, children learn goal orientation through the organization of activities. For instance, children playing a game of hide and seek learn how to follow the rules of the game, organization, in order to win the goal of the game. This practice in goal oriented play develops the child's sense of purpose. Ages 6 to 12 or late childhood are the industry versus inferiority stage. During this period of life, children learn cultural norms and structure, including educational structures. This helps in the development of competence in them. 12 to 18 is a crucial period that involves the identity versus role confusion stage. During adolescence, individuals usually go through puberty changes. Once these changes occur, the individual is able to gain a more mature outlook to life. He or she is able to consider the consequences of personal choices and thus develop a sense of personal values. Between 18 and 30, the intimacy versus isolation stage, an adult may develop intimate relationships. During early adulthood, many individuals decide to marry or live with a significant partner and start families of their own. Middle to late adulthood, which begins at age 30, is the generative versus stagnation stage. This stage of life is centered on caring. Adults in this stage of life focus on raising their children and find ways and means to become successful in their careers. At this stage of life, an individual learns to show concern for others rather than remaining focused on the self. Lastly, late adulthood or the integrity versus despair stage, individuals become self-accepting and become wiser with life experiences. there are many concerns related to the lifespan perspective of human development. One of the contemporary concerns is from a biological standpoint. According to Boyd and Bee, ethnology assumes that genetic behaviors are encoded into the individual in order to aid the survival of the organism. The problem with this and other biological standpoints is that it does not place enough emphasis on the environment, and these types of theories are difficult to test. Behavior genetics is another contemporary concern related to lifespan perspective. Behavior genetics focuses on the effect of heredity on differences between individuals. Heredity is when traits or behaviors are passed down from one relative to another. Heredity is important because it is believed that individuals related to each other share more of the same traits and behaviors than those that are not related to one another. This concept allows for a better look at what role environmental factors play on an individual because it is easier to study. Change is constant and a part of every stage of life. Understanding the changes through interpretation of an individual's situation and culture enables a better grasp of perspective on human development. Development is multidimensional. By this we mean that development is affected by many intermingled factors such as biological, psychological, cognitive and socio-emotional forces. Multidimensional simply means that development is not linear, moving in one direction with a predictable pattern. Instead, it points to increases or decreases, gains or losses, predictable growth or unexpected changes. Paul Baltes, a German psychologist, devoted his life to establishing and promoting the lifespan orientation of human development. He was also a theorist in the field of psychology of aging. Baltes argues that there are 7 key features which impact human development across the lifespan. 1. Development occurs across one's entire life. 2. Multidirectionality and multidimensionality. 3. Development as growth and decline. 4. The role plasticity plays in development. 5. The influence of socio-cultural condition on development. 6. The interactions of age graded, history graded and non-normative historical influences on development. And 7. The multidisciplinary nature of human development. But by multidimensionality, Baltes refers to the fact that a complex interplay of factors, endogenous, processes originating from within the organism, tissue or cell, as well as exogenous, any material present in an individual organism or living cell, but originating outside that organism, influence development across the lifespan. Baltes argues that a dynamic interaction of these factors is what induces an individual's development. As a result, certain factors may have more powerful effect on a particular domain than others. Regardless, Baltes stresses that not one single criterion determines the development of a domain. Development is multidirectional. By multidirectional, we mean that development can simultaneously proceed in more than one direction. For instance, both physical strength and cognitive ability can increase at the same time. Don't forget that multidirectional includes not only increases in growth and performance, but also decreases as well. In the second part of the proposition, referring to multidirectionality, Baltes states that the development of a particular domain does not occur in a strictly linear fashion that increases toward functional efficacy of a particular modality. Rather, development can be characterized as having the capacity for both an increase and decrease in efficacy over the course of an individual's life. As a result, the development of various domains is multidirectional in nature. The developmental process occurring between childhood and adolescence, known as puberty, illustrates Voltaire's principle of multidimensionality and multidirectionality. Puberty is described as a period of rapid morphological body changes, including physical growth and hormonal changes, as well as myriad psychological and social contextual changes. Psychological changes during adolescence involves a broad range of experiences that individuals encounter in this period of dynamic transformation, including the development of advanced cognitive faculties such as abstraction and other adult cognitive processes, new emotions along with the other psychosocial changes. The concept of puberty is also multidirectional, as individual domains may both improve or decline in levels of effectiveness. Self-regulation is one domain of puberty which undergoes profound multidirectional changes during the adolescent period. During childhood, individuals have difficulty in the effective regulation of their actions and impulsive behaviors. Scholars have noted that this lack of effective regulation often results in children engaging in behaviors without fully considering the consequences of their actions. Over the course of puberty, neuronal changes attempt to deal with this unregulated behavior by increasing one's ability to regulate emotions and impulses. Inversely, the ability of adolescents to engage in spontaneous activity and creativity, both domains commonly associated with impulse behavior, decreases over the adolescent period in response to changes in cognition. In the end, neuronal changes to the limbic system and prefrontal cortex, which are associated with puberty, lead to the development of self-regulation and the ability to consider the consequences of one's actions. Development involves gains and losses. Baltes argues development across the lifespan is influenced by the joint expression of features of growth, gain and decline, loss. Extending on the premise of multidirectionality, this principle argues for the existence of a parallel process of development that is composed of both gains and losses. Baltes argues that factors which contribute to gain or loss are not in equal proportions, but adjust according to systematic age related shifts. An individual's development occurs within the framework of this dynamic relationship. This relation between developmental gains and losses happens in a direction to selectively optimize certain capacities which require the sacrificing of other functions. This process is known as selective optimization with compensation. According to the process of selective optimization, individuals over the lifespan prioritize particular functions above others, reducing the adaptive capacity for specialization and the improved efficacy of other modalities. The acquisition of effective self-regulation in adolescence illustrates the gain-loss paradigm put forth by Baltes. As adolescents gain the ability to effectively regulate their actions, they may be forced to sacrifice features selectively to optimize their reactions. For instance, individuals may sacrifice their capacity to be spontaneous or creative if they are constantly required to make thoughtful decisions and regulate their emotions. Adolescents may also be forced to sacrifice their reaction times toward processing stimuli in favor of being able to fully consider the consequences of their actions. Development is plastic. plasticity is the term researchers use to emphasize that development is highly flexible. Plasticity is highly variable. Some people seem to adapt much more readily than others. Unfortunately, plasticity seems to decline as time goes on. But remember, since plasticity is highly variable, the rate at which it declines can differ substantially from one individual to another. Applications of plasticity. Neuronal plasticity, or the capability of the brain to adapt to new requirements, is the prime example of plasticity, stressing that the individual's ability to change is a lifelong process. Recently, researchers have been analyzing how the spared senses compensate for the loss of vision. Without the visual input, blind humans have demonstrated that tactile and auditory functions still fully develop. The superiority of the blind has even been observed when they are presented with tactile and auditory tasks. This suggests that the specific sensory experiences of the blind may motivate the development of certain sensory functions, namely tactile and auditory. One experiment was designed by Robert Roeder, the American biologist, and his colleagues to clarify the auditory localization skills of the blind in comparison to the sighted. They examined both the blind human adults and the sighted human adults' abilities to locate sounds presented, whether the sounds are central or peripheral to them. Both congenitally blind adults and sighted adults could locate a sound presented in front of them with precision, but the blind were clearly superior in locating sounds presented laterally. Currently, brain imaging studies have revealed that the sensory cortices in the brain are reorganized after visual deprivation. These findings suggest that when vision is absent in development, the auditory cortices in the brain recruit areas that are normally devoted to vision, thus refining them further. A significant aspect of the aging process is cognitive decline. The dimensions of cognitive decline are partially reversible, however, because the brain retains the lifelong capacity for plasticity and reorganization of cortical tissue. Manke and colleagues developed a brain plasticity based training program that induced learning in mature adults experiencing age related decline. This training program focused intensely on oral language reception accuracy and cognitively demanding exercises that have been proven to partially reverse the age related losses in memory. It included highly rewarding novel tasks that required attention control and became progressively more difficult to perform. In comparison to the control group, who received no training and showed no significant change in memory function, the experimental training group displayed a marked enhancement in memory that was sustained at the 3-month follow-up period. These findings suggest that cognitive function, particularly memory, can be significantly improved in mature adults with age-related cognitive decline by using brain plasticity based training methods. In conclusion, we can say this: any single discipline's account of behavioral development across the lifespan would not be able to express all the aspects of this theoretical framework. Hence, lifespan researchers explicitly suggest that combination of disciplines is necessary to define the origins and directionality of developmental theory. This combination of disciplines would be able to delineate the source that one example, such as psychology, would be quite difficult to approach. The field of psychology provides only a partial representation of human development from conception to death. The concept of a multidisciplinary perspective assists in helping one to understand the complexities of lifelong development. Many disciplines are able to contribute important concepts that integrate knowledge, which may ultimately result in the formation of a new and enriched conception of development across the lifespan. I am sure you are able to understand the importance of development and developmental principles in our session today. A thorough and proper awareness of both these factors is important, because unless you understand the principles behind the study of development, you will not be able to take in the other aspects of development. By establishing the above mentioned principles of human development, which are like the goals of studying child development, we can ascertain the scope of the study of child development.